Good evening and welcome to our live stream Saving the Night, Protecting Dark Skies in Our National Parks, hosted by Grand Canyon National Park, Grand Canyon Conservancy, and Lowell Observatory. My name is Kevin Schindler and I'm the Historian and Public Information Officer at Lowell Observatory. And it's really an honor to be joined tonight by several very good friends and also dark sky specialists. Dean Regas served as the astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory from 2000 to 2023, was the astronomer in residence at Grand Canyon in 2021. He's the author of 6 books and also the host of a popular podcast called Looking Up with Dean Regas. Lauren Camp is a poet who served as the New Mexico Poet Laureate from 2022 to 2025. She is the author of 8 poetry collections, and her latest, In Old Sky, grew out of her experience as astronomer in residence at Grand Canyon National Park also. And then we have Rader Lane, who is Mr. Dark Skies at the Grand Canyon. He's a dark sky advocate, park ranger within the Division of Interpretation and Resource Education at Grand Canyon National Park, and is the dark sky ranger at Grand Canyon, and did so much to help turn Grand Canyon National Park into an international or dark sky park. So this is really great to have all of you on board, and thanks everybody for joining us. So often in the past, dark skies conversations have been about astronomers and how it affects looking at the sky and studying the sky in terms of the science. But as we're finding out more and more, it's more than just the science. Dark skies impact all of us. Artificial light is something that has a negative impact on all life on Earth, plants, animals, including us humans. And so it's gone beyond just the realm of just us astronomy nerds. And so that's why tonight we have such a great range of participants. And we're gonna talk about a few topics tonight. We're gonna talk about why we need dark skies. Again, more than just astronomers doing their craft. We're going to talk about places and people that connect us to the dark skies, such as Grand Canyon National Park, which is certainly a place that connects all of us together. We're going to talk about some challenges that dark skies present. Some of those things like the inherent fear that humans have of dark skies. And then we're going to go back and tie it all together and talk about the benefits that dark skies provide. So for the next hour, this is what we're going to talk about. This is going to be a fun, just open conversation. For those watching, if you have any questions or comments, put them in their comment link, and then our team, behind the scenes team, will get them to us, and we'll try to answer them in an appropriate time, and we'll also take some time at the end if we have any others. So that's kind of what we have in store tonight. Let me bring everybody else on board. Rader and Lauren and Dean. And one other thing that I want to mention how this is going to go tonight. I talked about the 4 themes we're going to talk about, but it turns out we have a pretty awesome poet here in Lauren, who her books are just stunning and inspiring. And again, because this is more than just science, it's culture, it's humanity. Lauren is going to lead off with each of our sections with one of her poems to get us kind of in the mood for that topic. So this is all going to go really fast probably, but I think it's going to be kind of fun. We'll cover those 4 topics. And Lauren, at some point, can also talk about her poetry. And if you'd like to learn more, she can tell you where to find those, her books and such. So Lauren, let's start out by talking about why we need dark skies. And you have a poem, I've Been Learning the Best Nights. So yeah. Why don't you kick that off first? If you want to introduce that a little bit before you read it, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I'm so happy to be here. This is the very first poem in my book, In Old Sky, which came out of my time as astronomer in residence, a truly incredible experience at Grand Canyon National Park. It was August 2022. I went there as a poet, not as an astronomer, to see how I could use my senses to describe the pristine darkness surrounding the Grand Canyon. And so I'll start with this and I'll read a few others as we go along tonight. I've been learning the best nights. Growing up, I was interested in the gravity of our small backyard slide, climb and drop into Earth, ladder, orbital cycle. Around me, an algorithm of trees and the dull stipple of suburbs. I gathered my matter in the slipping terrain. At the Grand Canyon, that first night, the atmosphere boiled in its handiwork. Shallow wavelengths altered umbra and silver. The bees strew about in their soft bulk, and I went with them, went everywhere, looping petals, tying every flickering, every fact, the whole galaxy to another.
What a
Beautiful.
great way to start our discussion. And Rader, maybe we'll start with you because you're kind of the linchpin of this whole group. Because three of us were astronomers in residence, and we answer to you while there. And so maybe let's talk a little bit about what Lauren is reading, and then how does the dark sky benefit us? We talked about astronomy, but we know that dark skies are good for human health, for wildlife, for ecology systems in general.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just such a beautiful poem to start off with, and thank you, Lauren, for introducing us into this conversation that way. It really does capture the holistic nature of both the night skies and what we're trying to do with, the astronomer in residence program. It's the poem. I mean, that poem in specific sort of starts out. To me, it's there's a mechanical aspect to the first part of the poem, and it really does remind you of the science and the astronomy that we're doing that makes preserving dark skies important, but it very quickly evolves down into the aesthetics of the night sky, the as you mentioned, the ecology that's dependent on the night sky, our own personal experience with it. And I was kind of trying to think, there's got to be some joke here where it's like a park ranger, an historian, a poet, and an astronomer walk into a bar, and we're somehow able to talk about dark skies in a fruitful way. And this poem kind of, to me, encapsulates that, and it really does encapsulate the astronomer in residence program, which in turn reflects the night skies. We're trying to bring in not just astronomers, but poets, musicians, writers, scientists of all kinds, to really come and focus their medium through the lens of night skies. And when we do that, and when we stack up all you amazing people together, we start to really understand night skies as sort of and build a whole greater than the sum of its parts. And this is really where we get into the myriad reasons why night skies are incredibly important. As you mentioned, there's the human health, there's the ecology, there's economic factors, there's the scientific exploration, and there's an aesthetic, a spiritual, and a cultural side to protecting night skies. And all of you contributed such great insight during your residencies to our visitors and to the local communities about night skies. And so that, to me, that poem just beautifully encapsulates this chapter of what we're discussing here. So again, that's just, thanks, Lauren.
And Rader, you've been at the Grand Canyon for how many years now?
Going on enough so to where you've asked me to do an oral history interview recently, Kevin. So I think I'm going on 15 years.
15 years. So
Yeah.
3/4 of your life, clearly. Um, and so you're used to living in a place with dark skies, and it's probably kind of stunning when you go to a large city like, say, Cincinnati, that is a lovely city, but is much larger. It has a lot more artificial light. And I mentioned that, of course, because Dean lives in Cincinnati, but gets out to Arizona, I would say not often enough, but as much as he can at least. So Dean, what's it like for you to come out here from a place that's lit like Cincinnati? Again, a great place with a great heritage of astronomy, but coming to a place like Grand Canyon and Arizona.
Yeah, it's just one of the most amazing parts about most amazing things I've done in my life in the last 10 years. I started off with going to the Grand Canyon Star Party. So that's the annual 8-day, 8-night festival where astronomers, amateur astronomers set up telescopes. And that was my first introduction to the park and to kind of the way that they do education, which is very unique and very like hands-on and engaging. And I fell in love with just the whole philosophy because it kind of just went along with what my teaching style too, is to get people's eyes up to eyepieces and see the actual stuff themselves. And so that was my first experience. And then as the years went on, I think that was also the year where they had the provisional designation Rader, is that right? In 2016,
Right.
when they had the big, the provisional dedication of it being the dark sky park. And
Right.
I've been back every year since then. And and I try to think, okay, so what am I, there's other places in the world to go. There's other parks to go in the world. Why does Grand Canyon keep calling me back? And of course, it's that scenery that's behind Kevin there in the background. But
Why?
but I yeah it's seamless there, a seamless picture. But it's really the view behind Raiders head there that's really what grabs me, is that it is such it's almost like food to me. Like, this is air. It's like breathing air. It's like when I get to places like that and you just can step outside and see the Milky Way outside of where you're living is something that is really priceless. And I do have to tell Raider this, is that you have ruined my normal life. Like in Cincinnati, it is so difficult to come back here and look outside on a clear night and I see 20, 30 stars. And so for me, it recharges my batteries. When I come out to the Grand Canyon, I just feel like, this is how it should be. And so it's really refreshing. And I think the other thing is that I get to see so many people having that same reaction, because so many people are coming from light polluted places like where I am. And it is every bit as much of a destination as the canyon itself. The dark sky leaves an impression on visitors. If they stay the night and they come to a dark sky program, it is something that they will remember as they go home, most definitely.
And that's really important point, Dean. And it goes back to the first astronomer in residence, Tyler Nordgren, who coined the phrase "half the park is after dark." We associate the Grand Canyon with going in the daytime and these spectacular views, and you're looking back in time, these eras of time as you look down. But then at nighttime, you look up, and it's stunning. You're still looking back in time, but kind of in a different way, at the stars and the planets and everything. And it's
Well,
stunning that day or night there's inspiring things to see and do.
it's so interesting too how even this conversation has, when we're talking about the benefits of night, has so quickly shifted to the aesthetic, the the personal experience, the contact with the night that we have. And one of my favorite astronomers in residence to just witness this sort of happened to was Lauren, and because she came in with this lofty task of writing about this very intangible concept of natural darkness. And I think through her poems really did capture all the reasons why natural darkness is important in our lives, from the ecological, from the scientific, but where it was most powerful to me was that personal experience. So I'm just interested, Lauren, like what was that process like for you? You're jumping into this immense landscape and tackling that lofty task.
It was hard. I mean, it felt almost impossible at the beginning. Like, how would I describe the Grand Canyon, first of all, in like, poems are small. You don't take on a giant landscape or a giant anything, a giant subject in a poem and do it justice. You take on something small, a narrower sliver. And so to take on the canyon in any way, and then on top of it to take on the cosmos, felt truly daunting at the beginning. And then I just started. I mean, Rader, I walked a lot. I walked at dark. I walked at dusk. I walked for hours afterwards. I just I would be out there thinking about what the air felt like, what sounds I heard, what the darkness looked like at 7:30 versus at 11 p.m. versus, middle of the night, further deeper into the night, or early morning. And it was just starting to distill different things down to the most basic senses. And of course, the canyon, which I couldn't see, but I could feel as this enormous presence.
And I think, Lauren, this is so great because what you explain and give in your poems is what makes it so inspiring for so many people that may not be interested in astronomy per se, but just the connection. Everybody can feel a connection with the universe. Maybe they have a telescope or binoculars, or just go out when there's a meteor shower and it's dark skies and you can absorb it. But it's beyond just the astronomy, and you capture that so well, and I think really represent kind of the modern look at dark skies and why they're important. It's much more than just the astronomy science per se. It's the human emotion and the connection to the universe.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
go ahead, Lauren.
Oh, go ahead, Rader.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, that in a way is it's the conduit, through which people become invested in the night skies. Her poems and her visceral experience on the ground, and what visitors have here is that initial contact. And then we can start having then these conversations about, the fact that over 30% of our commercial lighting in the United States gets thrown up into the night sky, and we waste up to $3 billion a year in finite resources, just light polluting the night. Or, the fact that half of the mammals and half of the insects on Earth are nocturnal, and we depend on the the pollinators at night to pollinate our crops. And when we have excess light pollution in the environment, it really does throw off their rhythms and their timing. And we can begin to talk about all these other aspects that light pollution affects, but the initial visceral contact with the night and all its immensity, and being able to learn about that as well through Lauren's poems is really the first step. And I think it'll always be the first step in understanding light pollution.
I think in a way it's about how do you get each individual invested in the night skies, in that natural darkness. For me, it was poetry. Maybe my poems go out and help someone else, but that idea of if you get the opportunity to stand under an incredible dark sky and just say, wow, that's not enough. I almost feel like it requires like really an investment of um, keeping someone there for a little while to pay attention.
Well, I think
Yeah.
it's really inspiring to so many people that, that you go and you come away from it wanting to do art, wanting to write, wanting to and this is I think I got this joke from somebody, but it was an author that said, the Grand Canyon is indescribable as an introduction to their 1,000 page book trying to describe it. And so it's because people, it is indescribable, but yet we can't help ourselves, can we? We can't help but try. I think poetry might be the better way to go than those 1,000 page books about the Grand Canyon trying to describe it. That's just my opinion.
It's an easier book to put in your pocket anyway.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, we've talked about sort of the importance of dark skies and that connection we have as humans. Let's talk a little bit about, the places. And we've talked about Grand Canyon and northern Arizona. Flagstaff is the world's first international dark sky city and had the world's first outdoor lighting ordinance enacted in 1958. Let's talk a little bit about, places and people in dark skies. And Lauren, so let's hear your second poem, The Clark 24-inch Aperture, and what that refers to. And then why don't you read it to us?
Hey, let's talk about Lowell Observatory.
I didn't
So
want to be too much of a homer there, so I'll turn it over to you for that.
okay. So after I left Grand Canyon, I left with a strong interest in learning more and in staying somehow underneath very dark skies. I live in northern New Mexico. We have fairly dark skies here, but I wanted really dark skies. And I wanted the chance to talk to astronomers and to look through more telescopes. So Lowell Observatory invited me to stay for a couple of weeks and to do just that. And I pretty much looked through every telescope I could as often as I could and asked endless questions of the scientists. But I also, the telescope that I most wanted to look through when it was open, which wasn't always, was the Clark, um, a historic telescope. And again, I was there trying to distill what I saw and what I learned through poetry, which forces me to slow down, as does standing under dark skies. I have to say, they're similar. Like when you're out in the dark, you are not doing other things. And I think that's something we could talk a little more about too, which is we're all so busy and we're all sort of multitasking and running from thing to thing. And darkness sort of slows us down to do one thing, hopefully, which is look or listen or, just kind of be. So anyway, this really is about the Clark telescope at Lowell Observatory. It's called the Clark 24-inch Aperture f11.3. This corner of our active universe is a right place to fix from the biconvex crown of a refractor telescope on plush pictures of vanishing. Disconnected, we hinge in line to see the dominant speech of clouds and storm push through. Clear sky blossoms into what seems perfectly incidental. What is an hour or a minute? What is what if in this life? The world flung around undisturbed, and the ceiling slits open and out to a dancing museum. Azimuth and range of the eternal fueled first story. The polar axis was made in 1895 and adjusts for its summonings. Even then, it was written. The new telescope has revealed many close and difficult double stars. I have an ordinary life. In this wooden dome, the eye widens to the stained glass scale of old universe still splayed about. Everyone in this line has an ordinary life. We are given a moment to scan time, ruddered by colors of galaxy birthings. I have an ordinary life. How good to have it. The sky doesn't cover up. It goes wider still.
Now, Lauren, I'll have to say that I understand the idea of you saying you have an ordinary life. It compared in some ways to the cosmos and this magnificent telescope that is the home of so many important discoveries and by both scientists and the public, because people look through it, our visitors look through it every day. But your life is anything but ordinary. I'll just have to point that out. You've lived an inspiring, remarkable life, and to be able to share your perspective as a poet, I think really touches us all.
Thank you. But
Um,
I feel a lot like when I'm under dark skies, I feel like a speck on a speck in a
yeah,
way that is very satisfying to me. I understand to other people that is not that, but to me, that's really satisfying. And I think that's what I mean by ordinary.
and I think that's interesting because with Lowell we hear a lot of times people visitors that come in and say I feel so small, I feel so insignificant compared to the vastness of space, and I can understand that, but it shouldn't be something that depresses us or makes us feel small. It's just the awe and wonder to realize how vast it is, and that we're really lucky to be part of it. In our own small way, we're part of that vastness, and you capture that really well.
I think also what's captured really well in that poem is there's, at least for me, whenever I travel to a place like Lowell Observatory, there is a certain reverence that I feel up there on that campus. And it's hard to describe, but it is kind of like being in some sort of a temple or a church of some kind. And not to say that's my religion, but I'm saying there is a quietness, and there is a an invitation to observe. And we observe outer space, we observe inner space, and looking through a telescope out into the universe and exploring that extent of outer space is just this beautiful practice of observation, just in that universal sense of the word, that gives you that same feeling as when you're walking in one of these other sort of holy places. I don't know if you guys have that same feeling, but I feel like I want to whisper a little bit when I'm walking around inside the echoing walls of the Clark telescope. I don't know what that is.
It's funny you say that because, Rader, I've been at Lowell now for 30 years and 3 weeks or something like that. And I host a lot of film crews that come up, and I still go inside the Clark Dome and take pictures because it's still cool. But I've told the same thing you do. It's like going to the Lincoln Memorial, where people are just in awe, and you can hear whispered tones quite often because it feels reverential. It's this monolith in front of you, this portal to the universe, and because of partly because of its size, but partly because of what it's done. Like this particular instrument revealed that the universe is expanding. This particular instrument was used by our species in preparation for going to another world, the moon in the 1960s. So it's not just grand to look at. What's been done with it's one of the most storied telescopes in the world. And on the other hand, it's just one telescope. You can have a small telescope that you just got from Walmart, and set it up, and it's inspiring to see. I love it when there's like grandparents and their grandkids, and they're looking through a telescope for the first time, and they feel that awe and wonder. Like for the first time, they both seen Jupiter and its belts and zones and its moons. And it's just so inspiring. So you have a place like the Grand Canyon or Lowell Observatory with these incredibly dark skies, but you can feel that awe and wonder at other places. Dean, you're again in Cincinnati, and you cherish your time in the Grand Canyon, but you spend more of your time in places like Cincinnati. But you still must see that awe and wonder from visitors who are looking up, maybe for the first time, or maybe not just looking up, but the awareness, the connection with the cosmos, that there's a consciousness to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's something magical about, telescopes and putting your eyes up to telescopes. And especially, I've seen so many people do that for the first time, and their faces literally light up. I mean, that light is coming to them from all those miles away, and they're, you can see it changing their whole face. I mean, their whole being. They just like this smile, this grin comes on their face, and or this disbelief, like, wait, what? That's Saturn? Are you crazy? Like, I mean, like then they just, it dawns onto them what is going on. And I don't know how many times I've seen that, probably thousands, tens of thousands of times on people's faces. And that's I think one of the big draws to amateur astronomers that do public outreach, because that is you see a dark sky and you experience it yourself, but sharing it with somebody else and seeing how that works on them is just, I mean, it's just you get hooked on it. I'm sorry, you do. There's the people
Yeah.
that come to the star parties for 8 nights in a row. They are like, it's like the biggest rush. um, and it is funny thinking about Lowell Observatory. I haven't really thought about it that way before, Rader, but like, observatories in general do have this temple feel to it. And I think Lowell itself, now that I think about it, is a cross between a temple, a university, and Hogwarts. It kind of has a feeling of a mystical thing. And like, because you see astronomers walking around like, hey, that's the guy that discovered that. Oh my God. And they're like just having coffee under the pine trees. And I'm like fanboying over all these like astronomers walking around. Um, and so it really is one of those things that I feel like, I've seen that so many times in even light polluted skies, that even if you show people a view of the moon, it's really life changing. When I had my first telescope, I mean, my background is not in astronomy. My background is in history. I got a history degree way back when, and yeah, that didn't work out so well. So I ended up
You
finding
still
an
use
ast
it. You still
Oh
use
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Right?
I still use it. Astronomy
Astronomy is all
history.
about history.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I found astronomy later in life, after college, and my first job was working at a little planetarium here in Cincinnati for the Cincinnati Parks called the Wolf Planetarium. And they had a ancient telescope that was in the closet that nobody had probably used in 20 years. And I took it home and somehow muscled it over to look at Saturn for the first time, basically, as you know, and it just blew my mind. I mean, it changed my entire life. And so now I've been doing astronomy for more than 25 years. And it really is one of those things that, yeah, and I've told this anecdote to Kevin and Rader probably lots of times, but one of the real cool experiences at Grand Canyon, which really made an impact on me, was I was doing a stargaze outside, just showing people planets and that kind of stuff, and showing people the Milky Way up in the sky. And so many people said that is the best part of my trip. And I was like, wait, there's like a canyon behind us, right? Like, I mean, you see the canyon? And they're like, yeah, yeah, the canyon's fine, fine. This night sky was the best part of their trip. And that blew my mind, because that's how powerful this is. This is how much it's missing out of so many people's lives. And when they see it, it just really resonates with them.
And that's why
Well,
we rely on people like Lauren to capture this so that people who might not be here can, we can talk about how great the canyon is, but capturing it like poetry and in ways like that, it really unveils it to so many other people.
Not everyone gets to be there under
Yeah.
at the Grand Canyon or at Lowell or in Flagstaff or under dark skies. I mean, I grew up in the suburbs of New York City. The most I could see in the sky was the moon. And, and that wasn't, that was enlightening when I could see it. But there was nothing else. And, a lot of people have that situation where they are.
I think, Lauren, that might be a good transition to talking about some of the challenges of dark skies, because there are challenges like the perception, the fear that's inherent with us, and the perception of crime, that a darker place, I might be more exposed to crime. Somebody like you has come from the big city and grew up with bright skies, and then suddenly has moved to a place that's really dark. I mean, maybe you could speak to that a little bit, because I certainly talk to people who are just so used to the brightly lit sky, they don't feel safe when they go to a place that's dark sky compliant.
Yeah, I felt that um, I felt so nestled by the dark skies at Grand Canyon, especially as I do I live in a rural farming village in northern New Mexico, and I feel safe here too. I can hear the coyotes and I can hear what's going, I can maybe see or feel the bats or whatever, but I feel safe here. But I know that darkness is a fear for people, and I heard it a lot, even at the canyon. People are afraid of the darkness. I also did a lot of research, a lot of reading about light pollution and bright lights. And Rader and I had big conversations about how bright lights do not make us safer. And we can talk about that I can talk about that for a long time, because I came back to my home as really a disciple of let's reduce light anywhere we can. But I throughout the poems that I wrote, they were all from my perspective pretty much. And then at some point, partway through the month I was at the canyon, I started thinking about other people's fear of darkness specifically. And I thought I would investigate that through a poem. And so I went to the prime source for all information about fears, and that is Google. And that's where this poem starts. The poem is called Fear of. Google says God, then says holes, long words, heights, being alone, fear as fear of dark figures, dark spaces, dark forests, dark hallways, dark, deep water, nightmares, fear of nighttime, night sky, night, fear of not night. And dark is weak against. Dark is not evil. Dark iron sword, dark inner thighs. Dark is not black. Dark is useless. Fear of darkness. Dark isn't a word. Dark isn't the same. Does not exist. Tonight I sat alone on a wooden bench thinking small facts. I had been there since the sun first stressed to pink strips across the sky. I believe we suffer between the void and compulsion. I believe we tribal extraordinary lives. The sun turned to vibrations and faster ancestors. The mind was clearing. This summer, alongside saw desire for its lessening face. I could give over to it. Let that vision be as large as creation.
Lauren, what inspired you to write that poem? You said it was you were going beyond your own experiences to others. Was this based on conversations you were having with people or observations you made, or?
It was overheard remarks about darkness, and it was also a comment from someone at the Conservancy who expressed a direct fear of darkness. And I said something to the effect of, why? But it's nice to be out here. I would walk around at night with my little red headlamp, seeing one or two steps in front of me and liking that idea that didn't have to see further. I didn't have to have a plan deeper than that. It was a straight line. It was, it was a path I could just go.
Yeah, I think one aspect that you said when you introduced the poem that I resonated with was, feeling nestled in darkness, feeling cocooned in it. And you're right, when you do lose much of that visual stimulation and you only have the red light just in front of you and then this impossibly beautiful sky above you, your mind quiets and it gets into this sort of meditative mode, and I can't help but feel a sense of comfort in the dark. But I do recognize that, as you say, darkness is a real fear, and it's an innate fear. And I think there's so many aspects to touch on here, but one thing that Grand Canyon's, we're not trying to do is necessarily get rid of every single light in the park. We are trying to, it's not a mutually exclusive thing. Basically, we can have smart, subtle lighting that provides all that safety that we need to navigate at night, to operate at night, to feel safe at night, while at the same time revealing the pristine skies above us. So it really isn't this mutually exclusive thing. And I think, when in a counterintuitive way, it's like when done properly, the few lights that we do decide to use at night really do become these beacons for us that draw us closer together. I mean, it really is the central fire. I mean, we've evolved with the central fire for thousands and thousands of years, and that's in part to curb our natural fear of darkness, but it is also a source to bring us all together. And so, smart lighting can really act as that source of communion amongst people. And if you can combine that with our natural need for darkness, I think that's the best combination. But that is to say, recognizing that people have concerns about crime and safety. And Dean, coming from Cincinnati, you're in a larger city. I mean, what would you say, to somebody at one of your many talks that you give around the city? I'm concerned about crime. I'm concerned about this, that, and the other. My own safety at night. We need these lights to be safe. I mean, what would you, as an astronomer, be your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys know this too, but before I was an astronomer, I was a kind of a security guard, which is,
Oh,
I mean, not really. I mean, it wasn't very high pressure. I had this thing where I like did the rounds of this school at night, and I the first at first I was like, oh, this is a little scary. So I'd always turn on the lights wherever I'd go, and do the rounds and everything like that. But soon I realized like it was better if I kept the darkness. Like I could see better actually if things were darker. You actually adjust your eyes, and at the end I felt like that was kind of my added protection. Like that was my added superpower, was that I had the darkness. Like it was part of it. And I think that's the thing, is that it's a mistaken thing that lights equal safety. And especially if you are, but I can also see how it can be a fear as well, because here I do so many things at night, and so many events and programs and astronomy programs. But I got to say my anecdote from my first night at Phantom Ranch down at the Grand Canyon, where uh, I was down there my first day, you know, I hiked all the way down there with Rader, which was it was such an incredible experience. And, you know, I'm dead tired, but Rader was staying in a place like about a half mile away from where my cabin was. And Rader said, "Oh yeah, just come on up after you eat, and we'll hang out." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, sure." And so like I eat and I go outside, and it is so dark, like scary dark. Like I'm just like, I don't even know where I am. I'm like in the bottom of the canyon. And so even with me, like, and my embracing of the darkness, I didn't come over that night, Raider. I'm sorry. It was too scary. I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna fall down something. But then after that first whole day being down there, I was fine. Like I was like walking back in the middle of the night, and you know, as long as you kind of know a little bit of your surroundings ahead of time, it can be part of this like this shield, this like, yeah, you're in this kind of different state. And I will never forget that next night when I walked back from the program, that you think of Phantom Ranch being down at the bottom of the canyon, that you can't see much of the night sky, but it's the canyon walls are pretty far set back. And I was walking back, and the three belt stars of Orion were right coming up through this notch of the canyon walls. And I mean, they were just like my, like, not guardians, but they were just like this. I always have a um, uh, very kind of personal relationship with the constellations, and having Orion up there guiding my way home was such a cool thing. And so I just look forward to that every single night there. But man,
Well,
that first night I wasn't going anywhere. That was too scary.
And Rader's
well,
telling you to just, yeah, Rader's just telling you to, you know, use the stars as the guide, probably. Figure
yeah.
out you can go
That's true. That's true. My
Well, there's
legs
a
were
couple
pretty
things
tired
there.
too,
One,
so that was part of it.
and there's a couple of things there. You know, one, it's you know, first just the being at the bottom of the Grand Canyon and looking up at the stars. I mean, you're right. The canyon walls frame the constellations in such a way down there as to give them a heightened stage presence in the celestial sphere. And you really do realize that there's, you know, degrees to darkness, and these matte black walls actually give us a better understanding that the night sky is actually pretty bright and it's illuminated. And so that's a just beautiful contrast. And then the second thing I would say about that, you know, is you had this innate fear coming outside of Phantom Ranch at night, and you're an astronomer, and it's like human beings, like equally criminals and burglars, they're human beings too, and they would have that same innate fear, you know. And so it dawned on me while you were talking that, you know, before the age of electric light, more crimes and things were committed during, say, a full moon, right? And that's where the phrase lunatic comes from, is that, you know, prior to the age of electric light, people were able to actually get outside, navigate at night under the full moonlight, and get into more trouble and more shenanigans. And so that's where that phrase lunatic comes from. And so it's the very, you know, addition of light into an environment that causes people to get out and about. And so when it comes to crime and safety, you know, a lot of people, there's been studies that show, you know, if you have, you know, say your porch lights on all night long, that's just inviting criminals and burglars to see sort of what's on offer, you know, and your front porch. And they're more apt to go and explore because they're also more comfortable in light. Whereas, you know, the smarter move that we would recommend would be to, you know, say, put a motion sensor on your house and have it off until, say, a perpetrator were to walk in front of your house, and all of a sudden the light turns on, and they don't know whether it's a motion light or if the, you know, homeowner has detected their presence. And so it's, you know, both those, and the sort of the addition of light into an environment oftentimes promotes people getting into more trouble than otherwise sort of submitting to that natural darkness and, you know, getting a good night's sleep instead.
I think that's a good transition to kind of wrapping up with the benefits of dark sky. You know, some of the things that have been perceived as challenges from dark skies are actually benefits. We've talked about some of those, like the perceived safety versus the real safety. And then going back to the awe and wonder that's inherent in us as humans. So Lauren, let's hear your last poem called Chorus that'll kind of reconnect us with this awe and wonder and the benefits of the dark skies.
And as Rader said, maybe a good night's sleep, or maybe just, a slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
The poem is called Chorus. Good night from the grip of the world. Having so long bundled into winter and woke and slept complicit in my indoor vault, watched the forecast, then through summer's holler took every one of its hot identical hearts. Having finally to learn the gravity of space, having the lens and wavelength to know night might unfold me to the tender scheme of the planet. So much I had to want before I could get here. The magnitude, my own reflection and doubling, so much peering, so much waking first. The moon is wryly waxing crescent, building a curve to its littlest spill, all month, down and up, until it is padded with the full flex and diameter of its off-centered softness. Origin shows up as ink, paint countless vessels. I want my mind dozing on wings and secret feet. Want the noble clamor of Milky Way as it sieves over earth. Darkness can be a persnickety vapor, but I'll hang my steps to any path that will fit me to sky time with its glittery wardrobe. The night I can sever my shadow, sure, I'll let the universe cut through me. Far flung, all the lights twisted silver. Perhaps I haven't told you any secrets, but I've begun to prefer to crease into the edges of constantly whole, the hours without their effulgence. Looking off, I can skim the almighty rain with its fancy nest to the north, watch its long legs engineer the horizon. The wind has arced again, and certain birds whistle their blue calloused ballads.
Lauren, I think of all the poems you've read, I mean, this one is a really good final one because it takes us to that place of, like you were saying, of just stopping life for a few minutes and stop staring at our phones and technology and just, just absorb the universe. And you can really, when you think about it, you can almost imagine yourself there under the dark skies and being part of that environment, not being an observer, but actually being part of it. And again, that sense of awe and wonder of not just looking at the night sky, but being part of that community of the universe, I think.
Well, and one thing, oh, go ahead, Lauren, go.
I was just going to say sort of settling into it, which is what I found night after night.
Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, and when it comes to that connection, the whole time I was listening to that poem, I was also thinking of something Dean had said earlier about the experience with telescopes, and I think one really interesting aspect of what we do here at the Canyon and what we do at the observatories is we are connecting people with real light. And there's this notion in the astronomy community is like there's advantages of looking at Hubble Space Telescope images and the James Webb Space Telescope images and things like that, and they're incredible and beautiful and incredibly important. But when you look at those on a screen, kind of what Kevin, you were saying, those are all zeros and ones, at the end of the day. And when you get to actually come to some of these places, you are drinking in the actual photons that have left a galaxy perhaps 2.5 million years ago, and have been traveling through intergalactic space at the speed of light for that time to finally land at the bullseye of your eye and give you a sense of awe and wonder as a sentient being, there's no, that's one of the greatest joys in astronomy is to connect with those photons that have made that physical travel through space. And you become a time traveler yourself when you get to drink in those actual photons, that actual light coming from the cosmos. And I think that's one thing that people like you, Kevin and Dean, as outreach astronomers, are just masters at connecting people with, here at the Canyon particularly.
And I often think of that, the time traveler aspect. It allows us to go back in time. And I like to point out, from our skies, we can see the Andromeda galaxy. And you think about the light that's hitting your eye started traveling to us before our species was here. We were upright walking maybe, but Homo sapiens weren't even here when that light started traveling. That's how long it's taken for that light to get to us. And it's remarkable to think what seems like an instantaneous thing. What's happened during all that time? What's happened to the Earth and the universe and humanity during that time? And we can capture that all. You can experience that if you just stand and absorb it and watch it. It's pretty stunning.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's a one-on-one experience too. I mean, it's just you at the
Yep.
eyepiece. It's just you with the universe. But it's not isolating in that way. It's still it speaks to you in a way um that's indescribable, yet I still write lots of books about it. But still, you get my point.
Right. Well, we've got just a few minutes left. And so I'd like to end with a couple of things. First of all, if anybody has any questions, send those in now. And we did have one question that came in that it wasn't really appropriate at the time what we were talking about, but this is a great time to talk about it now. And maybe Rader, you can address this since for all that you did to help with the dark skies designation at Grand Canyon. But the question is, are there any restrictions on flyovers as part of dark sky designation?
Good question. Yeah, there's no restrictions on flyovers as part of dark sky designation specifically, but happily there's already flyover restrictions that made that discussion sort of a moot point in a lot of ways. So in the daytime, there are flyover restrictions over Grand Canyon. The helicopters have very specific flight corridors they got to abide by, as does and FAA regulations sort of give you the guidance on how far, how low you can get towards the top of the Grand Canyon in the sky. So we didn't have to worry about that, which was good news.
Yep. Well, for those watching, if you've enjoyed tonight's discussion and want to learn more, or are inspired by the sky, or want to learn, just get a feel for what it's like to look at a dark sky, visit the Grand Canyon, visit Lowell Observatory, the Grand Canyon Star Party, which is, again, indescribable because you're combining the Grand Canyon with the wonder of space. That happens in late June. And also there's the Astronomer in Residence program. And I'm not sure, Rader, where the application process is with that right now. Maybe you can talk about that program in general.
It should open up pretty soon for 2026. So be on the lookout. You just go to grandcanyon.org to the Astronomer in Residence page and look for when we're going to announce the application process, which should be coming out pretty soon. And we'll be selecting 3 residents for 2026.
Great. And also look up Lauren Camp's website, and her poetry is available for in books. Dean has written a bunch of books about astronomy. And so there's a lot of different resources to learn more about the night sky. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. See, it went so fast. We're out of time already.
Always does.
But I'd like to thank the inspiring Dean Regas, Rader Lane, Lauren Camp for having this discussion tonight. And then behind the scenes, the folks who make this happen, Katie Varian, Lauren Cisneros, Heather Craig, and then some of the other Lowell team who help with marketing and such, Sarah Gilbert, Alex Elbert, Maddie Mooney, and Cody Halfmoon. Thanks to all those. Thanks everybody for joining us. And get out there and enjoy the dark skies. Thanks. Have a good night.